There has never been a more important time to be vegan. Here at Veg Your Best, I want to help you limit and eliminate the consumption of animal products without feeling deprived, overwhelmed, or unsupported, even if no one you know is vegan. My name's Michelle Olander, and if I could go vegan in 2015 with all my excuses, I know you can start moving in that direction too. Veg your best, and there's nothing you can't do. Episode 130, The Vegan Registered Dietitian, Virginia Messina. Welcome back, Veg Your Besties. Welcome and welcome back. Today we are publishing episode 130 of Veg Your Best. That sounds legit, doesn't it? 130 consecutive weekly episodes as of today. And I'm recording this one from sunny Southeast Florida, where we have a view of the Atlantic. Okay, not from this closet where I'm recording, but there are gorgeous sunrises and pelicans and lizards, and where we've had quite a few of our kids and our grandkids come to spend some time with us during this past month. Many of you may know that my husband is Canadian, and I think Canadians love Florida more than anyone. Now, when this episode comes out, the last day of February 2023, I think it will be, I'll be starting my plan to return up north to southern New England and my normal life, and there'll be some upcoming travel and vegan content coming to you in April from Spain and in May from the UK. So pretty soon we'll be getting ready to rent this Florida condo out to some other tenants and get moving. Yes, we keep moving. You know, you get to a certain age and there are a lot of questions where the only good response is, you know, if not now, when? So, as you know, if you listen every week, you know I really never give any dietary or nutritional advice. That's way above my pay grade. I do not give health advice, and I'm honestly very leery of a lot of the unscientific memes that go around among vegans that being vegan is a panacea for every single possible health issue. You know, in fact, even vegans die. And coincidentally, that's the title of a book by today's guest, Virginia Messina. Ginny Messina has a master's in public health. She's a registered dietitian. Her website is theveganrd.com, theveganrd.com. And she's had a long career, worked with so many different groups of people. And I was so excited that Ginny would agree to be on Veg Your Best because her work is always about encouraging people to make ethical decisions with their food choices while still making intelligent nutritional choices for themselves and for their families. Vegans don't always have the best reputation for being science savvy and evidence-based. And so Ginny Messina has been using her education, her years of experience, working with a variety of populations to help change that. I know I've discovered Ginny through several of her books, and she's written and co-written a passel of them, a bunch of books with others, including Carol J. Adams, Jack Norris, another registered dietitian, and Patty Brightman. And she keeps a resource-filled website, which you should write down right now, theveganrd.com. Theveganrd.com. So get ready. Get ready for an informative conversation right now, and I'll check back with you on the other side. Ginny Messina, the Vegan RD, registered dietitian, welcome to Veg Your Best.
Hi, thank you so much. It's great to be here.
And did I say it right, the Vegan RD?
It's the Vegan RD. That's right. That's my blog and my social media handle.
Social media, because you're a registered dietitian, you have a master's also in public health, as I understand
yes.
it, and you came to my attention because of how many books you've written, which is kind of amazing. And you've written with your co-author, Carol J. Adams, who is really a very inspirational person. I've really enjoyed reading her work.
Yes, I have too. Yeah, I enjoyed working with her so much.
Yeah, she's really sometimes people will talk about ecofeminism and the feminist issues in veganism, and some people's eyes can kind of glaze over, but her writing and her point of view is really very inspirational.
Yeah, it's really nice when you can work with a co-author and learn so much from them. We've worked on 3 books together, and it's just been a great experience for me. She's so inspiring and so knowledgeable.
And one of her books, I always pull out because I always say the title wrong. It's Never Too Late to Go Vegan, because that is
Mhm.
kind of the subtext of all the work I do is it's never too late. We sometimes think everybody who goes vegan is young and has, some kind of counterculture type of orientation. And the people I work with are overwhelmingly midlife and often very, very traditional people who very, very standard lives, who are just going, maybe that's not a problem, that I've never been vegan until now.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the first book that I worked on with Carol, and Patty Brightman was our third co-author. Patty is an activist in California, and she was a literary agent, and so she was Carol's agent, and she was my agent, and that's kind of how all three of us connected. And Never Too Late to Go Vegan was Carol's idea. She felt that it was, and we all felt that it was important to have a book for this particular population, not just to give people the tools and the information that they need in order to move towards a more plant-based diet, towards a more vegan diet, but also because we wanted to show people that your food choices and the choices that we make at this stage of life can be empowering, because we all know that as you age, you kind of feel like you're losing power, you're losing influence, and adopting a vegan diet or moving towards a more plant-based diet is a way to really have an influence on the world. And that was an important message that we wanted to convey in the book.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I have my little hobby is the idea of a million vegan grannies, and that we worry about generational wealth, but there's so much about generational health, generational compassion, generational eco health, that we really have that kind of influence over the next generation and going forward in our lives.
Yeah, I love you. I love your idea of a million vegan grannies, because when we were first brainstorming about this book, the first title we came up with was "Grandma Goes Vegan," and it would have been kind of fun, but we ended up going with this other title, a little bit more inclusive.
I think, well, no, for sure. I think it is more inclusive, and I do believe. I know some people push back at the concept of grannies. I, for one, am not. I'm a grandmother of 4. I'm a babcia. It's a Polish name, so I'm not a granny. A lot of people go, "Oh, nobody uses that term, granny." I know lots of
Yeah,
grannies,
yeah,
but but if that's what you're pushing back on, I guess good. It's not the vegan
yeah,
part.
yeah.
So let me understand what your vegan journey was, because one of my jobs here on the podcast is to show a variety of ways people came to this way of life. And obviously, you studied nutrition, you studied diet and health. Which came first for you?
Yeah, the nutrition came first. I was a dietitian. I got my undergraduate degree in nutrition and became a registered dietitian, and then I went back to school to get my master's in public health nutrition. And so that was really my interest. Public health nutrition is what was really what brought me into this field. And my first job out of graduate school was working in southwestern Michigan in a clinic that served an underserved population. We were working primarily with migrant farm workers who were coming from Mexico and Texas to Michigan during the summer. And I worked a lot with pregnant teenagers. I worked with older people who were very isolated and very low income. And so that's what I was doing, and I loved it, and I loved working with all of those populations, and was learning a lot. But at the same time, I was personally becoming very interested in vegetarian nutrition, and that was driven primarily by ethics. I was animal advocate, and was starting to look at how the way I ate connected to that. So I became a vegetarian. I started learning more about vegetarian nutrition, and this was in the 1980s. So we didn't have quite the body of literature or the body of knowledge that we have now. I left my job in public health and moved more into employment where I was more of an educator. I was working at Michigan State University in the cooperative extension office as an educator, and then I went to Central Michigan University and became an instructor teaching dietetic students. And throughout this journey, I was getting more and more interested in vegetarian nutrition. And as I was working at these different jobs, I kind of became known as the dietitian who knew about vegetarian nutrition. So whenever there was a project or a need for a speaker on those topics, I was the person who was called upon to do that. So I was really building in that little community. I was building my reputation as a vegetarian dietitian. And then I moved to Washington, D.C. for my husband's job, and had an opportunity to go and work for the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, PCRM, which is a nonprofit organization that promotes a vegan diet. And that was totally new to me. I was not a vegan. I was a lacto-ovo vegetarian, and didn't know all that much about veganism, but I took the job and I learned about it. I learned about vegan nutrition. I learned about vegan ethics, and there was really no looking back. I just became so involved in that aspect of nutrition that became my main focus. And from then on, I really became the vegan RD, and that's what I've been doing since then. That was about 1991.
And so do those titles butt up against each other as a registered dietitian in public health and veganism? Are they compatible in general for you?
Well, I think that they're compatible. When I first started working as a vegan dietitian, I was working primarily within the field of vegan dietetics. For example, the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which used to be the American Dietetic Association. That organization has a group of vegetarian dietitians, the Vegetarian Dietitian Dietetic Practice Group. And I'm a member of that. And I was working on I have over the past 3 decades worked on a lot of projects with that organization. And I have also worked on a lot of projects with different animal rights organizations. So that's been my community, and it's been a very good fit. But within the larger community, the larger dietetics and medical community, there is some skepticism about veganism. And certainly I have felt some skepticism directed towards me as somebody who identifies as a vegan. I think a lot of that comes from the hype about vegan diets. We read so much about vegan diets as kind of a cure-all. Some of the dubious claims that are made about vegan diets, and I think that's created some pushback. So I try to always be very clear about the fact that, I don't believe that a vegan diet is the only healthy way to eat. I don't believe that it's a cure-all. I do think that it's a really good choice from an ethical perspective, from an environmental perspective, and those are my reasons for being a vegan personally. And then professionally, I want to help other people who are choosing veganism or choosing more plant-based diets. I want to help them to do it as healthfully as possible. And so that's really my perspective on veganism as a health professional.
I think that's so important because I'm on social media with lots of other vegans, and stuff comes through there that just basically, you said a cure-all. I'm fine if they put the citation of where they got their information for. I'm for it. I'd love to believe it, but there's a lot of stuff that comes through that I'm a bit dubious about. And I heard you talking on a wonderful podcast, Simon Hill's The Proof, where you talk about some of these specific. Simon asks you a bunch of things and asks if these are myths, and from your point of view, from your scientific point of view, where you see the evidence that backs these things up. You talk about some of them, about oil, about dairy and cancer, I'm trying to remember all the topics, but it's an excellent, excellent podcast. And I don't want to rehash it here. I hope everybody will listen to Simon Hill's The Proof and your episode, Ginny Messina, talking about that, because I think it would be very helpful for a lot of people who are curious about how we evaluate what we're doing when we want to stop or limit the animal consumption in our
diets. Yeah, I think so too. And another book that that I co-authored with Carol and with Patty Brightman is Even Vegans Die. And we wrote that book to not so much to push back against claims that are made about veganism, but to push back against the shame that surrounds illness. And vegans die, vegans get cancer, vegans get heart disease, vegans do have health problems, and certainly we were especially concerned about the issue of obesity and weight gain among vegans. There's a tremendous amount of shame around all of those issues. And so I think that it's really important to be clear about the fact that a vegan diet is not a guarantee that you're going to be skinny. It is not a guarantee that you're going to be healthy. And that's okay. You choose to eat in the way that feels best to you. You deal with your health in the way that feels best to you, always knowing that you are making this choice that is so good for the world and that is so empowering. And that's the thing that matters the most.
I think that's beautiful to say, because yes, and a vegan diet can be all kinds of things, the same way a non-vegan diet can include and restrict all kinds of things. It's endless, the permutations that are available basically in both sorts of orientations around food.
Right. And, and some people don't especially care about their health. That's not important to them. Or some people their health is not really affected that much by what they eat. They kind of have this great metabolism that seems to work well no matter what they're eating. And so certainly I want people to eat as healthy a diet as they can comfortably do. But I also want people to know that there is a way to be a vegan for everybody. If you just want to eat junk foods all day long and you don't care about anything else, you can do that and be a vegan. Or you can eat a really healthy diet, a really convenient diet, a really gourmet diet. There's a way for everybody to choose a vegan diet.
And what about the pushback we sometimes get that it's very expensive to eat as a vegan, eat a whole food plant-based diet?
Yeah, I think that I think it's an unfortunate truth that certain dairy products and even certain meat products are very inexpensive because of because animal agriculture is so efficient at the detriment of the animals and the environment. And because of farm subsidies, it keeps the price of these foods very low, whereas more healthy foods like fruits and vegetables, they tend to be fairly expensive. But you can certainly offset that by eating grains and beans, which are pretty inexpensive. I mean, there's nothing less expensive than beans, especially when they're cooked from the dry state. So I think that it's not so much that vegan diets are expensive. I think that eating healthfully can often be more expensive if you're choosing to include a lot of fruits, fresh fruits and vegetables in your diet. Uh, you can choose frozen vegetables as one way to save money, and they don't taste as good, but they're just as good for you. And if you saute them in a little bit of olive oil and garlic, then they're still pretty good. But it's not so much a function of vegan diets as it is a function of healthy diets that include a lot of produce. That's what pushes prices. That's what pushes your grocery bill up. And then again, in contrast, eating lots of beans and grains and potatoes and sweet potatoes is a good way to bring those costs down.
I don't talk about food that often on the podcast, but on my Instagram, I often put what I'm eating. And I just say it ad nauseum. It's a grain, and a bean is like the foundation of most of my meals. And then I fill it in with whatever else is in season or in the fridge or in the freezer or in the pantry. And it's a heaping bunch of greens, whatever I've got. And then the grains and the beans. Everything is alliterative in that. But you said the 3-letter word that PCRM sometimes talks about, oil.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So oil is one of the things I do know you mentioned with Simon Hill on the proof that that it's an example of the spectrum of whole food or plant-based diets, right? Some people will totally avoid oil hopefully for health benefits.
Yes, I think there are a lot of people eating plant-based diets or vegan diets who choose not to include oil in their diet because, well, for a variety of reasons. One is that it's not a whole food. And another is that it's fairly high in calories because it is, oil is pure fat. I don't care so much that it's not a whole food. I don't think that every single food in your diet needs to be a whole food. I think you could aim for maybe 80% and then fill in with these other foods that have a little bit of processing. Oil is certainly, olive oil is just, the juice squeezed out of olives. It's very lightly processed, and it's a healthy food. I do include oil in my diet. I think that it improves the mouthfeel of certain foods. It improves the flavors of some foods. It enhances the nutrient absorption from foods in salads, for example. So I'm very happy to include small amounts of oil in my diet. It's not unhealthy to include that. So it really becomes a personal choice. If you're counting calories and that is one way that you can reduce the calories in your diet and you're happy doing that, it's fine. But I do push back a little bit against this idea that a healthy diet can't include oil, because it certainly can. And for most people, I think people who are moving towards a more plant-based diet or a vegan diet, it can be unhelpful to start piling on these other restrictions to say you can never have oil, you can never have desserts. If your diet is mostly whole plant foods, you can have these other foods as well and have a healthy diet.
Yeah, I think it's a good example of, like, if somebody is already suffering from significant heart disease or some other medical issue, well, then, okay, you go straight to whatever your doctor says you need to be eating or not eating, perhaps. But for most of us who are moving into plant-based eating, moving into a vegan lifestyle, to give us too many rules all at once and give up too many things all at once is kind of a recipe for backsliding or failure at it, I think. I don't know. I think that's been your opinion, right?
Yeah, I think so too. I think that people often find adopting a vegan diet it can be difficult for some people. It can be difficult to give up all of the foods that you grew up with and to find new ways to bake, for example, baking without eggs and baking with different kinds of fats. There's some challenges associated with that. I don't want to say that going vegan is hard. It's not hard, but certainly during the transition to it, there are these challenges. You have to learn new ways of eating, new ways of cooking. So I'm not in favor of making it more challenging by saying, you can't saute your onions in olive any longer. I agree with you completely that we don't want to add these other restrictions onto incorporate these other restrictions into dietary changes when people are already doing so many new things.
Yeah, I agree, because I don't like saying vegan veganism is hard, change is hard. Like
Yeah,
just
that's
all
right.
across the board, no matter what you're trying to do. Even
That's right.
if you're trying to learn to cook a gourmet meal or bake or anything, all these things are hard. You're not set up for
Right.
it. You don't have the experience for it. And I think veganism is no different at all. It's just changing. In fact, this week, I think coming out, my podcast is about lapsed vegans. And I wonder what you think, because I often hear people tell me, oh my God, I was vegan for a year or 3 years or 18 months and never felt better, so happy with myself, but I couldn't keep it up. And I'm always like, okay, but you could back off from it without completely dropping it. But there's something about our brains that don't make that happen so easily.
I find it I'm just so curious about people who were vegan and were happy being vegan, and then all of a sudden they feel like their health failed. And so they didn't add back a little bit of cheese or a little bit of fish. They decided to eat a carnivore diet, to eat nothing but meat, as though that's somehow the answer to not doing well on a vegan diet. And so I think that a lot of times people are looking for I don't know, they like extreme food choices, or they're looking for something new. I'm not really sure what that's all about, why somebody would jump from a vegan diet to something that is at the absolute opposite extreme. I do think that people often don't do well on a vegan diet because they don't have good information about vegan nutrition. For example, they might not be taking vitamin B12 supplements, which is really important
Super
for all
important, right?
vegans.
Let's put a point right there. Anybody who's eating, most people probably need B12 supplements if they're older, right? But
Yeah,
definitely they're
everybody.
not.
Yeah, according to the Institute of Medicine, which is the organization that establishes the RDAs for nutrients, according to that organization, everyone over the age of 50 should be getting at least part of their vitamin B12 from supplements or from fortified foods, because it becomes more difficult to absorb vitamin B12 from animal products as you age and with digestive changes. So yeah, so everybody over the age of 50 should be taking vitamin B12 supplements, and vegans at every stage of the life cycle should be using vitamin B12 supplements. And I think that there's a lot of pushback against that. People don't want to believe that we need supplements in order to be healthy. I think that a lot of times vegans will not take those supplements for that reason. They just can't believe that that's necessary, and then they fail on their vegan diet, and it creates this idea that a vegan diet isn't healthy or can't be healthy. Well, it can be healthy just with this one small change, with taking a vitamin B12 supplement. So, and I think that sometimes people eat diets that are too low in fat, too low in protein. They don't feel well.
Too low in calories, period, I think,
Too low in
right?
calories, period. Eating a raw foods vegan diet, just becoming too restrictive with vegan food choices. Um, I think that people often end up not feeling well, or just not feeling satisfied. They're just not happy with their diet, and so they end up abandoning veganism and either going to this other extreme, to a carnivore diet, or just adding some animal products back to their diet. And I think that we know, because of the work that you do, that there are all of these other reasons related to our social lives, and learning how to cook, and exploring new foods. People just find it difficult to stay vegan. They're not getting the social support that they need. So I think that, for me, as an advocate for veganism, and as a dietitian who wants to help people feel good with it, feel good as a vegan, I think that all of these things are so important, not just nutrition, but also giving people the social support that they need, and the support that they need in exploring new foods, and new ways of cooking and new ways of eating.
I think it's so important for any change that you make, but certainly with veganism, you have to be willing, I think, especially in the beginning, to fail a little bit, because that's where you learn so much. And instead of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, you go, oh, why could I not keep that up? Maybe I need more food, or maybe I need to wait until I learn how to cook these other things before I completely give up fish or completely give up eggs. Um, Sometimes people are mad at me when I say that because there's criticism can come from every side of the equation.
Right.
But what we're trying to do is get people to thrive and leave animals alone,
Right.
not bounce back.
Yes, and I think that that's really important because that's something that I try to convey to people who are in the process of going vegan or have adopted a vegan diet, that if you have a lapse, if you eat a non-vegan food, that's not a failure. It is just a lapse, and you keep moving forward in whatever way you can and keep making better choices, and you'll get there. So I think a lot of times, it's the same thing with weight loss diets, and most of us women know this because most of us have been on weight loss diets at some point in our lives. um it's you kind of get this all or nothing idea. Oh, well, I stopped being on my diet, so I'm just going to give the whole thing up. And I think that people do this with veganism as well.
Yeah, because I think sometimes you can handle all of it except the social situation. And
Right.
so then you need to learn, you maybe give yourself a little bit of a pass for a while you learn how to ask for what you want, while you learn. That's why I talk about the vegan grannies. While you talk to grandma and say, I am not eating that, grandma. I still love you. I adore you.
Yeah.
But I'm
Yeah.
not eating that. And you're not denying your traditions. You're not denying your family history. So sometimes we have to learn certain areas. We don't want to just give up everything just because there's a certain area that's a little bit tough for us.
Yeah. And those conversations with grandma about your favorite cookies that she's been making for you since you were 3 years old, those are really hard conversations. And so yeah, I completely agree with you. You have to do your best and realize that there are some areas that are going to be more difficult than other areas, and you'll work through those over time.
Yeah, I talk on the podcast a lot because I came to this. I don't know if you've ever heard this term that I use, excusatarian. I was an
Yeah.
excusatarian for a long time until I committed, and I found it very hard traveling to places where people were proud of the artisanal animal products that they were creating, and to go into a small area and say, no, I don't eat this food that you have been making for generations. And that really bothered me for a long time until I just practiced it. And
Right.
now I respect my reasons, so I don't worry so much. I know it's not done out of disrespect.
Right.
And sometimes people will agree, sometimes they won't. But same thing always.
Yeah, and I think that over time you learn how to talk about it. You learn how to explain to people why you don't eat something in a way that doesn't make them feel uncomfortable, or doesn't make them feel challenged. And it's all a learning experience. So that is something that also happens over time, that you may not be comfortable with right at the very beginning.
Yep. And this is part of your work. Your food is not just what's on the plate. It is
Right.
everything. It's where the
Right.
food comes from. It's who we have our food with. It's how we prepare it. So of all your books, which one would you like? If someone was going to start with one, which one do you think you'd point them towards?
Well, I think I would point them towards Vegan for Life, which is the book that I co-authored with Jack Norris, who is also a dietitian. He's the executive director of Vegan Outreach and has been working in this area for a long time. Um, and the reason that I would recommend that book is that it kind of covers all of the bases. It gives some information about why we choose veganism from an ethical perspective. It gives some information about the health advantages of eating a more plant-based diet, but I think does so in a way that is very honest about what a plant-based diet can do for you and what it can't do for you, and then provides the basic information that you need in order to ensure that you're meeting nutrient needs at any stage of the life cycle. So there is a chapter for older people, and a chapter for pregnant women and for people raising kids. So it kind of covers the whole every it's Vegan for Life. It's basically everything that you need to know about veganism in a nutshell.
So start there, Vegan for
So
Life.
start there, yeah,
I
and
like
then go
that.
and then move towards whatever is of particular interest to you. For those of us who are over the age of 50, then maybe looking at Never Too Late to Go Vegan. And for people who are concerned about some of these issues around your legacy and around illness and death and dying, then Even Vegans Die. I also wrote a book for women, Vegan for Her. I'm kind of not recommending that so much anymore, even though I wrote it and I'm supposed to love all my books and recommend all of my books. I think that it's probably a little outdated at this point. So I think that Vegan for Life is a better option for women.
Okay, that's good to know. So Vegan for Life, and we'll make sure that that gets linked in the social media. When people from a medical point of view, they've got stuff going on. I know some vegans don't like telling their doctors that they're vegan because they think or know or think that their doctor's going to go, okay, that's just not, stop it. How do we advocate for ourselves as people who are choosing to opt out of animal products? How do we advocate for ourselves and also take good care of ourselves in our conversations with our physicians? Do you have any kind of guidelines or recommendations for that?
Well, I think that it's important to, I certainly think that if you're talking with any healthcare provider, I think it's good. It's not always necessary for them to know that you're a vegan, but I think that there are, certain aspects of your health where it's something that you may want to discuss with them. Like I let my healthcare provider know that I'm vegan because I wanted to make sure that I was testing my vitamin D and bone health and things that are specifically related to diet, not necessarily to veganism, but that was important to me. And she certainly didn't bat an eye. She didn't care at all. But
you knew who she was talking to.
Yeah, I know, but that's certainly not true of all healthcare providers. So I think that it's important to let your healthcare provider know that you are vegan, that this is why you are vegan, this is important to you, and that you are a savvy vegan, that you read about nutrition and you are making sure that you are meeting all of your nutrient needs. So I think that when you have that conversation with a healthcare provider, you want them to know that this is not something that they need to worry about, that this is something you're happy to discuss with them, but that you really do know what you're doing and that this is something that is really important to you.
Now, I have heard, and this is a question you may say that you don't have familiarity with or don't have anything to offer on this topic. I know some people who lost a fair amount of weight, which doesn't always happen. When I first went vegan, I actually gained weight because I had to keep eating because I was not satiating myself the same way I had been.
Yeah.
But some people lose weight. And this one person, her doctor considered veganism basically an eating disorder.
Yeah.
That was this particular physician's feeling about it. And eating disorders and veganism are sometimes very contraindicated in the therapies, in the therapeutic community.
Right.
Is there, for people who maybe don't agree that they have an eating disorder, is there a way to advocate for themselves there, or is that very difficult?
Well, it is difficult, of course, because people who do have eating disorders are going to say that they don't have an eating disorder. So it's very difficult for the physician to know. Obviously, if it's an unhealthy weight loss, if it's a severe weight loss that's bringing the person down to an undesirable weight, then obviously the physician is right to be concerned about that. But I think what you're saying is that this is a really tricky situation because we just don't always know what's going on. It is absolutely not true that people who choose veganism, and particularly women who choose veganism, are at higher risk for eating disorders. It is true that some people who have eating disorders will choose a vegan diet as one way to mask that or to control their food intake and reduce their food intake. So I think that healthcare providers have to tread very carefully here. We don't want to just assume that because somebody's a vegan and they've lost weight that they have an eating disorder. But if it's a severe weight loss, then we want to look at what's going on and whether there are some other, whether there's some mental health issues here, or whether the person just needs some guidance to slow their weight loss or stop their weight loss. Maybe it's not something that they want at all, but they just don't know how to eat to maintain a healthy weight.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And some people are not incorporating the foods that they've taken things out, but they haven't added things in.
Right.
Especially if you have ever been a kind of devotee of low carb, high protein.
Right.
You take out all that protein, and you might be like, I can't eat all those potatoes. I can't eat all that
Yeah.
rice or grains. We've had so much. It's like we've had so much diet mentality over the last decades of our lives that sometimes it's a lot to unravel.
It is a lot to unravel, and it's absolutely true that often when people go vegan, they don't know what to eat. They don't know what is healthy to eat, and certainly there's a lot of fear around carbohydrates, and it's not warranted because these whole grains and potatoes and starchy vegetables, I mean, they're good for you. They're great to include in your diet. So we need to unlearn some of that mythology around food choices.
What is a food that you don't think people eat enough in your practice, in your experience? Like, what's a food that you think really everyone should go out there and try it?
Well, I think it's not a specific food. It's a food group. I think that people don't eat enough beans, whether they are vegan or not. I think most dietitians and nutrition health professionals are such fans of beans. They're kind of they're the dynamic duo for a food that's rich in both protein and fiber. And I'm such a fan of high fiber and high protein diets that's one of the reasons that I love these foods. They're just, oh my gosh, they just have so many great health benefits, and are a really easy way to improve your protein intake. So I think that I mean, I didn't grow up eating beans at all. We had sometimes my mother made lentil soup, which I refused to eat. And 4th of July, we had baked beans, and I refused to eat those. I was not eating these foods at all. And now I'm a big fan. And I think that there are a lot of people who are not eating very many beans, and I wish they would, even if they're not vegan.
And sometimes people who have not been eating a lot of beans or very high fiber foods need to take it slower than maybe the rest of us who are
certainly there's some digestive issues when you start adding these foods to your diet. And I think if you cook the beans really well, and you start out with some of the smaller choices like lentils and split peas, and then kind of work your way into it, that eventually your intestines will learn to be more comfortable with these foods in your diet.
Yeah, I think if you go whole all the way into it right away, you may have some discomfort if you're not used to it.
Yeah.
Another area I know people tell me all the time, they don't know how to advocate if they have a loved one in say an assisted living or in hospital, even for a period of time. That a lot of people, my parents are gone, but I'm kind of that sandwich generation. A lot of my friends still have older adults in their lives that they're worried about, and even if they don't want them to go vegan at this point, they may want them to have a little extra fiber, a little extra whole foods that they may have been able to make for them when they were living with them, but now that they're in a more institutionalized kitchen environment. Is there a good way to advocate for that you've found, how to help them, or what kinds of resources to offer to the kitchens in places like this?
Yeah, I think that there are not very many resources. The Vegetarian Resource Group has recipes, and I believe a cookbook for cooking vegan foods in volume that is very useful for institutions. But it's really difficult. It's a really difficult situation because in a lot of these institutions, it's just it's hard to serve that population, to meet everybody's needs in a way that's affordable, in a way that is going to be acceptable to most people, people who have been eating more refined foods and more meat and more dairy for all of their lives and are not looking to change. But if you have a family member or a loved one in one of these institutions, I think that what you can do, and the best thing to do, is simply to talk with the staff about what your particular loved one wants to eat. And maybe they would like to have something like split pea soup, which is
Mm.
something that you can make pretty low cost, making pretty easily in volume. It doesn't necessarily have to be vegan, although it could be vegan, but that might be one way to get a little bit more fiber, a little bit more beans into somebody's diet. And so I think that coming in with specific recommendations, presenting them as respectfully as you possibly can, because I think running an institutional food kitchen is a really difficult
Yeah.
job, and people get a lot of complaints. So I think that being proactive and positive and helpful is the best thing that you can do.
Yeah. And I also know a lot of people are afraid of fruit.
Of fruit.
Fear of fruit.
Yeah, fear of fruit, too much sugar. Yeah, too much
Yeah.
sugar. Yeah, obviously fruit is good for you, and I think a lot of institutions are serving canned fruit because that's what they can
It's
serve.
easy. It's easy. Yeah.
It's easy, it's cheap, and so I don't know, exploring some ways, and that's fine. I mean, it's absolutely fine. It's better than no fruit at all. But again, that's something that people can talk to the kitchen staff about and see if there are any ways to introduce more fresh fruit into
Mm.
diets that people might enjoy a little bit more.
Mm. It's what do you feel as I do, even in the few years, what's maybe 8 years that I've been vegan and experimenting in that direction, maybe another 5 years before that, the world's really changing in terms of its acceptance, it seems to me. Does it feel
Yeah,
that way to you? Because you've been vegan a long time and you've been in this field a long time.
yeah. It's I've been vegan a long time, and I've seen lots of changes. I think that vegans still make up a pretty small percentage of the overall population, at least in the United States and North America. I think that what's changing is that vegan food is much more accessible. I think a lot of non-vegans are choosing vegan foods for some of their meals, at least. And I look at my brother and sister-in-law. They're not vegans at all. They're not vegetarians, but I introduce them to Beyond Meat, to the Beyond Meat sausages, and they love them. And so now when they have sausages, that's what they have. And so that's creating a little bit more of a market for these kinds of foods. And they're I think that vegan meals in restaurants and vegan foods in the grocery store are becoming more accessible, and that is the big change that I'm seeing. It's just easier. It's easier to be vegan.
Yeah. And even if you just experiment with it, a meal a day or a meal a week, these are things that do help. It helps the market. It helps the people who are creating, bringing
Yeah,
these foods to us. It helps the restaurants. I always say,
yeah,
even if the restaurant has almost nothing on the menu, to ask for it, because it helps. They do learn over time that
right,
oh yeah, even if most of the people in the family or in the group aren't vegan,
right.
one of them is likely to be one of them
Yes,
along the way. Yeah.
yeah,
They're leaving money on the table because they're all not going to go if somebody can't come. In
that's
my
right.
in my
And
family, I'm the only vegan.
yeah,
Nobody goes too many places without me.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, see, yeah, same. I mean, the same with me. If you have a group of people who are looking for a restaurant, calling up ahead of time and saying, there are 8 of us and one is a vegan. Are you going to be able to accommodate that person? And I think that any restaurant owner who's smart is going to want to accommodate that person so that they'll get those 8 customers.
Yeah, I think we have to look for all the inroads, whether it's the foods we like. I mean, I do meet people sometimes, they just don't eat vegetables, so they
Hmm.
can't even imagine how this is possible. So in those cases, I assume you would suggest that they start eating some vegetables, not that they give up anything, but that they
Right,
start crowding out some things.
right. Yeah, no, I do. I think that that's really good advice, and I think that um, I think starting with what you know and starting with what you can add to your diet. For people who are looking to go vegan and find it a little bit scary, start looking at the recipes that you love and see if any of them can be easily veganized. Start exploring new foods, trying new foods, starting some of the veggie meats, trying some bean dishes, looking at foods that you already like, that you like that are already vegan, like hummus. Um, Adding more of those foods to your diet is a good first step instead of worrying about what you're not going to eat, what you're going to take out of your diet. It's just so much easier to take this more positive approach and see what foods you enjoy that you can add to your diet.
So if we have people in our lives who are skeptical about the health benefits, or the health, not the health benefits so much, but that of creating a healthy vegan diet, where do we other than Vegan for Life, your book, are there any resource groups that we should point them to begin with? Or do you think it depends on whether they've got small children or whether they're late in life, or athletes? How do you, where do people start getting good information?
Yeah, so I already mentioned the Vegetarian Resource Group, and that's a source of good information, of fact sheets and articles on vegan nutrition that it's very reliable information. The Vegetarian Dietetic Practice Group also has, that's a professional organization that I mentioned before, but they have part of their website is dedicated to fact sheets and information for the public. And, those are all created by vegan dietitians and vegetarian dietitians. So that's good information as well. I have nutrition primers on my website, theveganrd.com. And I try to update those and keep those pretty reliable on different topics like vitamin B12 and bone health. Veganhealth.org is another website for very motivated people who want to read a lot of information about vegan nutrition. It's a lot of science-based information, but for somebody who wants that info, it's a good, reliable resource. So those are the four websites that I recommend for vegan information that you can pretty much depend on that information as being valid and being up to date and being reliable.
That's marvelous. Okay, I think there's going to be a lot of information for people to get from this podcast. Ginny Messina, is there anything else you would really like? You are someone who is in public health. Is there a wish you have? Is there something you'd just love to see? If you were Surgeon General, if you had the ear of the powers that be, is there something that you would particularly like to see happen?
Well, I think big when I think, about my one wish. If I could have one wish to change the world, I would certainly want a world where no animals are being exploited, where everybody is eating a vegan diet and living a vegan lifestyle and loving it and being really happy with it. I think, my wish is for people to understand, for there to be, I think, more resources from the mainstream nutrition and medical communities, helping people to see that veganism is safe, it's doable, it's available to everyone. Because as I mentioned before, there are so many different ways to eat a vegan diet. I would like that information to be more prominent, and for people to understand that this is really something wonderful that we can do for the world. It's good for the environment, it's good for animals, it's good for our health, and just to have that information out there.
All right, well, that's a good way to end this, because that's what we're trying to do here. We just try to keep dripping.
Yeah.
Keep dripping and throwing the vegan seeds out into the community, because somebody was just saying today that they never knew anything about vegetarianism until they read a novel and one of the characters was vegetarian, and they went, oh, I guess, I wonder. It wasn't scientific, but it was just like sometimes the thing happens, the concept occurs when you're in that space of being a little bit more open.
Yeah, yeah, that's so interesting that's what kind of hit that person's thoughts and made them think about vegetarianism was a piece of fiction.
Yeah, because ultimately it's just our brains. What
Yeah,
makes us, as Melanie Joyce says, what makes us eat one animal, use one other animal, and pet another animal? It's just our thoughts.
yeah.
All right. All right. Thank you so much for joining me, Jenny. It's been a while to get us together on the pod, and I'm really, really grateful you made time for us.
Oh, thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
So, what did you think of Virginia Messina, the vegan RD? You know, in a world of memes and hype, I think it's really refreshing to listen to someone who wants to keep it real, as in there are enough real, ethical, political, environmental, and yes, health benefits to making vegan choices that we don't have to overinflate or overstate any of it. You know, science really can be our friend as we make the best nutritional choices available as well as the best ethical choices we can. A healthy vegan is, in general, an advocate who can create even more change in this world. You know, I hope you loved getting to know Ginny a little, and I hope that you will follow her on social media, where I think almost everywhere she's the vegan RD. RD, of course, meaning registered dietitian. TheVeganRD.com is also her website, and on her many books, I may call her Ginny, but she is Virginia Messina, MPH-RD, Master of Public Health, registered dietitian. So thank you. Thank you, all my veg heads, all my veg your besties. Thank you for joining us here. And until next week, kids, veg your best. Veg Your Best podcast production, music, and editing by Charlie Weinshank. Thanks, Charlie. Before you go, it would mean so much to me and the Veg Your Best team if you would hit subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, or share with someone you think might be interested. Something about algorithms, it helps bump us up a little in the rankings, and that's the best way to help others find the podcast and for us to find our audience. So, until next week, make it easy and veg your best.